Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Sukkah. We are up to Perek Bet, Mishnah Vav. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Aranbai, Medeliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, and Avdil ben Chaim Lachaim, for the Refuah Shelema, Bacha bat Esther, and Tinok ben Sarah, Betoch Shar Cholei Israel. The Mishnah begins, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, 14 סעודות חייב אדם לאכול בסוכה אחת ביום ואחת בלילה. A person must eat a total of 14 meals in the sukkah over the course of the 7 days of the festival, one on each day and one on each night. Now, like we mentioned earlier, the way one dwells in a sukkah during the festival of Sukkot should resemble the way one dwells in his house the rest of the year. Rabbi Eliezer rules, therefore, that since a person usually eats one meal during the day and one at night when living at home, he must do so in the sukkah as well. But the sages say, En adavar kitzba, the matter has no fixed requirement, meaning if one does not want to eat any meals in the sukkah, he is not required to do so. The sages say that there is no set number of meals that one must eat in the sukkah. If one chooses to fast or to eat only snacks, he is not required to eat in the sukkah at all. The obligation of sukkah is only that if one wants to eat a meal, he must do so in the sukkah. Now, the sages agree with Rabbi Eliezer that dwelling in a sukkah should be like living in a house. But they draw the opposite conclusion from this rule. They argue that just as a person living in his house can choose whether or not to eat a meal, the same is true for a person dwelling in a sukkah. Now, in practice, it is necessary to eat in the sukkah because one is obligated to eat meals on Yom Tov and Shabbat. And when one is obligated to eat a meal, one must do so in a sukkah. However, the requirement to eat these meals results from our Yom Tov and Shabbat obligations and not from our sukkah obligations. To fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah, there is no need to eat any meals. Chutz milelei Yom Tov Rishon shel Chag bilvad, the sages say, except on the first night of Yom Tov when a meal in the sukkah is obligatory. This obligation is derived from from verses in the Torah, as the Rav explains. We learn Hamisha Asar Mechag HaMatzot. We make a comparison from the words 15th of the month of Tishrei Sukkot and 15th of the month of Nisan Pesach. Ma'achilat matzah laila rishon chova, just like by Pesach, eating a kazayit of matzah on the first night of Pesach is a chova from the Torah. Mikan ve'elach ishut, and from then on it's optional. Af Sukkah, and the same law applies to Sukkot. Now, Rabbi Eliezer later changed his mind and agreed that only the meal of the first night is obligatory. However, he disagreed with the sages on a different point. Rabbi Eliezer further said, someone who did not eat in the sukkah on the first night of Yom Tov should make up for it by eating extra food on any other day of the festival, including the last night of Yom Tov, meaning the night of Shmini Atzeret or the day of Shmini Atzeret. Now, Rabbi Eliezer derives his ruling from the laws of the Chagigah offering, which one must bring on the first days of Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. The halacha is that if one failed to bring the Chagigah on the first day of Pesach or Shavuot, he can make up for his failure to do so by bringing it on one of the next 6 days. And in the case of Sukkot, he can bring the offering even on Shmini Atzeret, as the Mishnah says in Chagigah chapter 1, Mishnah 6. According to Rabbi Eliezer, the same applies to the meal of the first night of Sukkot. If he missed that meal, he can make up for it by eating extra food on any of the remaining days of the festival, including Shmini Atzeret. But the sages say, En ladavar tashlumin, the matter has no compensation. If he did not eat a meal in the sukkah on the first night, he cannot make up for it afterward. Al zeh ne'emar, regarding a matter such as this, it was stated, Me'uvat lo yuchal litkon v'chesron lo yuchal limanot, a twisted thing that cannot be straightened and a missing thing that cannot be counted. And the Rav does tell us, Ven halacha k'Rabbi Eliezer b'shtehen, the halacha does not follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer in both cases. The halacha follows the opinion of the Chachamim. That is in the Mishnah Vav. Mishnah Zayin now discusses the law of a person who is eating inside his sukkah, but his food is on the table outside the sukkah. If someone's head and most of his body are inside the sukkah, but his table is inside the house, meaning outside the sukkah, Bet Shammai Poslin, Bet Shammai rule that this arrangement is invalid because he might accidentally lean over the table and eat outside the sukkah. Bet Hillel Machshirin, but Bet Hillel ruled that it is valid because they are not concerned for this possibility. Now, Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel disagree about two cases. A large sukkah, If a person in a large sukkah eats from a table outside the sukkah, Bet Shammai ruled that he has not fulfilled the mitzvah according to rabbinic law, while Bet Hillel ruled that he has. And B, a small sukkah. If the sukkah is so small that it can hold only a man's head and most of his body, but not his table, Bet Shammai ruled that the sukkah is rabbinically invalid, while Bet Hillel consider it valid. And the Rav does tell us the halacha ki Bet Shammai, the halacha follows Bet Shammai in both cases. Ben b'sukkah gedula v'yoshev al petach sukkah v'shulchano b'toch habayit. Whether in the case of a large sukkah, a person eating in the sukkah eats from a table outside the sukkah. Ben b'sukkah ktana shen machzek et rosho v'rovo v'shulchano. Whether in the case of a small sukkah that it can hold only a man's head and most of his body, but not his table. Hakol asur, everything is asur. Gzera shema yimashech achar shulchano. Out of a rabbinic concern, he might accidentally lean over the table and eat outside the sukkah. Now, Bet Hillel cites support for their ruling. Amru lahen Bet Shammai leBet Hillel. Bet Hillel said to Bet Shammai. Amru lahen Bet Hillel leBet Shammai. לא כך היה מעשה שלחו זקני בית שמאי וזקני בית הלל לבקר את רבי יוחנן בן האחרוני. Did it not happen that the elders of Bet Shammai and the elders of Bet Hillel went to visit Rabbi Yochanan ben Hachorani? ומצאו שיושב ראשו ורובו בסוכה ושולחנו בתוך הבית, and they found him sitting with his head and most of his body inside the sukkah, but his table inside the house. ולא אמרו לו דבר, and they did not say anything to him in protest, showing us that even the leaders of Bet Shammai accepted this practice. Bet Shammai responded, אמרו להם Bet Shammai, they said to Bet Hillel, משם ראיה, you're bringing a proof from that incident. אף הם אמרו לו, but they did indeed say something to Rabbi Yochanan in protest. They told him, אם כן היית נוהג, לא קיימת מצווה סוכה מימיך. If this has always been your practice, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah of sukkah in all of your days, meaning you have not fulfilled the mitzvah in the way required by rabbinic law. And again, the Rav does tell us that Chaf follows Bet Shammai in both cases of the Mishnah. That is in Rabotai, that is Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.